All right, well, we'll go ahead and get started. That way we have plenty of time to discuss or talk and discuss and talk and also answer questions and what have you. Um, so for those of you who don't know me, I am Kimmy Ishmael. I'm with Community Farm Alliance, but I am on staff for the Kentucky Food Action Network, KFAN, which you are here with today. And I am joined today by two really great people. Melissa, I'm kind of throwing you in. No pressure. But I'm here with Dalla Emerson, and I'll let her introduce herself really quickly, and then Melissa.
Okay, I'll start. My name is Dalla Emerson. I am the Director of Food Service Operations for Bowling Green Independent Schools, and I will be talking about school meals today.
Yeah, thank you, Dalla. And then Melissa will be popping in and out when she can, so I'll let her introduce herself as well.
Hi there, Melissa McDonald. I am Executive Director of Feeding Kentucky as of just exactly a month ago today. So I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. All right, so we'll get started. So today we are going to cover what is the history of school meals. We'll do a little bit of context and background work before we dive into the meat of what we're going to talk about today, which is what is a school meals plan or policy? Why do we need it? What are some impacts? Why now? And then how do we succeed, and what are the advocacy opportunities? Of course, KFAN always wants to focus on advocacy and participating that way. Right. So, what is the history of school meals? So we'll get started talking about the National School Lunch Program. Dalla, if you want to maybe talk a little bit about what you know about the National School Lunch Program, besides that it was started in 1946.
So yes, the history behind school meals comes from around the Great Depression. Let me back up. So there was a war, and we needed to recruit people to fight in the war, right? By people, we mean young adults. And at the time, all of the new recruits were coming in very malnourished, and the government decided that they needed to do something about it. So the Department of Defense actually started the project of trying to feed kids in school so that when the Department of Defense needed those kids, they were well nourished and ready for the fight. So that's where the basis of the school food started. And the USA has since taken on the project or the task of handling all NSLP, which is National School Lunch Program. And there's a variety of things that go into it. I won't spoil it for later, but basically just keeping our nation safe and our citizens well fed and ready to defend our nation.
Awesome. Yeah. And with the implementation of school lunch program, you would think feed them lunch, also feed them breakfast. And that was started later in 1960.
That's what I wanted to hear.
And Dalla, do you want to speak a little bit about the breakfast?
Breakfast, sure. So breakfast came a little later, with obviously President Lyndon B. Johnson, and that's when it became like the breakfast and lunch at school became a thing. It still wasn't fully funded until much later, but 1966 definitely started off the jump for taking care of our children while they're in school, because at the end of the day, they're in school all day, right? And there's lots of studies out there that talks about the ability of information retention with and without breakfast. So a lot of that research went into making decisions for our lawmakers in providing breakfast for our students across the nation. And it looks a little different in every state because states also have some sort of autonomy in how they manage the program and who manages it. But at the end of the day, it's basically let's feed our babies breakfast and lunch and make sure that they have a jump start in life. There's other things that go into that, but that's the gist of it.
Thank you. Yeah, and then there are some things that you might need to know about while going forward for school lunches, which is CNR, which is the Child Nutrition Reauthorization, WIC, which is Women, Infants, and Children, and the current landscape around that and why that matters. So CNR actually is a big omnibus bill package similar to the Farm Bill. Actually, it's supposed to be renewed every 5 years. And it actually, when it was in 2015, it did not get renewed actually. So since 2015, we've just been extending funding to these programs through appropriations. So there was a push in 2019 to try and get it reauthorized, but it's failed, but still funds these programs. And that is where WIC comes from, actually, as well as the National School Lunch Act, as well as the Child Nutrition Act. And that through the Child Nutrition Act was where WIC was created. But it also has a very big implementation, which is down here at the bottom. It also created CEP, which is, Dalla, do you want to say what CEP is?
Absolutely. CEP is Community Eligibility Provision, and it is the federal grant that allows us to feed all the students in our program free of charge to the students. It's a really great program.
Yes, and that came about through the Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act of 2010, which was the last time CNR was reauthorized. All right, so now that we know a little bit of background context, why this matters, where it comes from, so what is a school meals for all policy? What would that look like, or what does that mean? So unfortunately, there is currently one single policy that encompasses school meals for all. But generally, there are 3 routes that states can pursue for a school meals for all policy idea, which is CEP, like Dalla said, the Community Eligibility Provision, Provision 2, or being locally funded. But we're mostly going to focus on number 1 today, which is Community Eligibility Provision, CEP. And we're also going to talk about an example of policy that is active currently in the state legislature, which is BR 95, which is being introduced by Representative Chad All and Senator Armstrong. I need to put that in there as well. And this would provide free school meals to all or most of Kentucky students by using local funding to pay for what CEP doesn't. All right. And that BR 95 is going to be called the Kentucky Proud School Match Program. This proposes up to $16.9 million in state funding annually to closely match the federal compensating rate for each CEP eligible meal. This program, though, will be voluntary and come with the commitment to Buy Kentucky Proud. This would effectively create a free meals for all program in Kentucky if all the eligible schools participated. The reimbursement there is 33 cents per every paid meal served in CEP schools, as well as must be grown Kentucky grown products. This is being introduced into this upcoming general legislative session and is something that hopefully we're going to see move forward, but we'll see. All right. And then we also have school feeding programs that are very important. And I'm going to turn it over to Dalla to talk about a few of these programs.
Okay, so the child nutrition reauthorization basically guarantees money to school nutrition programs. So through the appropriation of funds since 2010, we've been able to continue, but the Reauthorization Act really it basically says like, I'm guaranteeing you that this money is coming to you. And it covers a lot of different programs. So the National School Lunch Program is obviously the lunch one. And it provides a reimbursement for every meal that we serve. And school nutrition is not part of the general fund that schools receive. So whatever money is coming into the school district does not go to food service. Food service is basically a nonprofit, for-profit entity. They have to make all the money. By they, I mean us. We have to make all the money that we need to spend. So the way we do that is we put the money up front and we purchase all of the material, we produce it, we serve it. At the end of the month, we file a report with the state and tell them how many meals we served, and it has to be backed up by data. And then once they process that, we get that money back. So that's why it's called a reimbursement program. So that being said, if for some reason the government shuts down or they stop something midway or something crazy happens, we're not getting paid for the meals that we served. So some districts have the funds to operate 2 to 3 months outside of the federal government's or the state or outside of the government's reimbursement program. Not all districts have that cushion. So it is very important that we fight for funding school meals fully. The National Breakfast Program is pretty much like the lunch, just happens to be breakfast. It is a lower reimbursement, as you are expected that kids would eat less at breakfast than they would at lunch. So the reimbursement is lower. The Child and Adult Care Food Program, CACFP, they kind of have an umbrella in everything. So we have supper meals that we utilize in my program through CACFP because it's an after-school program. But they also regulate daycares, nursing homes, after-school care. They are a separate entity. They're not part of the National School Lunch Program, but schools can opt to utilize them. They have to apply. It's a grant, just like NSLP is a grant, SBP is a grant. Same thing with the Summer Food Service Program. It is a grant. You have to apply. There's a lot of administrative things that go along with applying for these grants, and they're all reimbursement-based grants, meaning you have to put the money up front before you can do your program and then apply for reimbursement. There are some instances, in some cases I'm not hugely familiar with, where they will front you the money up front. Say if you're an after-school care or whatnot, or if you're a school and you don't have the funding. But I haven't heard of that happening recently, nor have I had the experience with it. But all of the grants for school meals are reimbursement based. So if a district child nutrition program is running low and they don't have the funds to start up a program, more than likely that'll keep them from doing that program, whether it be summer feeding, CACFP. Usually breakfast and lunch is not one of those grants that are at risk, but supper meals, snacks, summer meal programs, all of those things do run a risk of not being utilized if there's not enough funds there. The special meal program It's exactly what it says. It's a program specified for milk, and it's made to introduce kids to milk and to help them build their little bones, to be stronger. It is also intended to help the milk farmers, the dairy farmers, with their production. So it's kind of a two-way helping pathway there, both for kids building their calcium in their bodies, and also the dairy farmers. The farm to school program grants, those are a lot of fun. It's one of my favorite grants. Basically, when you buy something locally grown that's being minimally processed, you're going to pay more for it because it takes a little bit more to produce those items. So you're going to pay more. And in a school district, the food service is already struggling because the reimbursement that we receive per meal doesn't necessarily account for labor and other expenses. It's basically food expenses, not labor, not all the other things that you do. So you have to leverage that reimbursement very tightly. And that includes sometimes going with a national brand versus buying local just because it's cheaper, right? You have anywhere from 1,000 to 100,000 students. It doesn't matter the size. However many kids you have to feed, if you don't have the funds, you don't have the funds. So the farm to school grant gives you extra funds that is specific to purchasing items locally grown, locally produced. So it kind of opens up the door for schools to have the local farmers and the local communities come into the school and participate, which is something we do in our district regularly, and we love it. So shout out to Farm to School grants because they're amazing. And the Emergency Food Assistance Program, those are administered a little different. We have PEBT, which was the pandemic SNAP benefits, and they actually have extended that pretty much every year now. And recently, we've had to run reports in the state of Kentucky to identify those students. And then those students have received benefits for the summertime. So instead of just being called PEBT, which is pandemic, electronic benefit transfer, it's summer PEBT, which means kids are receiving money for the time that they spent away from school and would not have had access to those meals that's being provided for them. So that's showed up recently. I'm not hugely familiar with the Kids Cafe. The backpack programs can be ran by your Friskies, by a school teacher. There's a nonprofit organizations that run it. Basically, it's what it is. It's food that goes home in the backpacks to help students over the weekend. We can feed them while they're with us, Monday through Friday, breakfast, lunch, and supper meals. But when they go home on the weekend, we don't know what the situation is. We don't judge. So backpacks get to go home with kids so that they can have something to eat. And majority of the time are food items that is easily utilized, right? We're not gonna pack a whole ham and some raw potatoes in there because we're trying to make sure that the kids have access to those things. If parents are working 2 or 3 jobs and third shifts and kids are having to take care of themselves, it needs to be something that they can manage on their own, like microwave mac and cheese or canned soups or crackers, peanut butter. And that program varies a lot.
Thank you, Dalla. Lots of great information and so many great programs. Let's see. Now we're going to talk about CEP, which Dalla talked about earlier, but I'll just talk a little bit about what it is. So it allows schools to serve breakfast and lunch at no cost to the student in areas with a large share of students from low-income families. This would be identified as ISP, which is Identified Student Percentage and schools would be determined eligible and reimbursed on a formula of percentage of students eligible for free or reduced meals in schools. It is based on their household's participation in other means-tested programs. So this could fall under SNAP or TANF, which is the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, as well as children who are certified for free meals without an application because they are homeless, runaway, migrant enrolled in a Head Start program or in foster care. So a lot of other different factors play into this. And there are changes going to be made in this, and that is what we're going to talk about now, is the changes that are being made with CEP and what that would mean for schools in Kentucky. And I'll let Dalla talk a little bit about those changes.
Right. So prior to these changes, a school had to meet 40% of their population, or their enrolled population had to be free or reduced, or qualify for free or reduced prior to being accepted into the CEP program. And that cut off a lot of schools that were on the cusp, 30%, 35%. And what that meant was that even though there were families, they may be families in those schools that could benefit from the program, they weren't able to because the school wasn't able to qualify. So a backdoor to that was the district itself. If the district itself was able to qualify and the application was completed as a district versus individual schools, you could rope that school in, which is what I did with two of my schools. The first year we went full CEP. Then the following year, one of the other schools qualified, and it was great for us. It was great for our families. I had a lot of testimonial from families that, were on the cusp of not being able to maintain. And the driving force behind it for me, specifically in my district, was the denial of a family of two district employees with kids in our district. They were denied for free and reduced off of $5. They made $5 a month too much. And that was the day I decided that we were going to go full CEP and we were going to make it work no matter what. So that being said, I had full support of my superintendent and my board of ed and all of the teachers. It was a full district-wide support. So it made it easy for me to make that transition. That being said, there's a lot of districts around the Commonwealth that don't necessarily have the support that I have in my district. So I would say that if you're having questions with your school district, that you may want to have those conversations with your board meetings, with your superintendent, and just kind of ask the questions nicely so you can maybe find an answer to it. The new rule, where we're going from 40% to 25%, will open up the door for a lot of schools, including my last one that is at 29.9%, or free reduced percentage. And so the 25 will automatically qualify them, which opens up a little bit more financial revenue streams for us. It's all based on reimbursement. It's based on the percentage of reimbursement. Just because you're being reimbursed doesn't mean you're getting the full amount. There are percentage changes for every level of reimbursement. You have your full free, you have your reduced cost, and you have your paid cost. And a lot of times school districts are hesitant because they may only be receiving the amount for the reduce, or however it works out for them. That therein lies the why aren't we full CP answers to a lot of questions. But the 25% is going to provide additional benefits for over 100,000 kids in Kentucky. And a lot of school districts are going to benefit from it because healthy, fed kids means better test scores. Better test scores means more funding. More funding means better school opportunities for our Commonwealth children. There was only 2 districts that did not qualify. I'm not familiar with those, but a lot of times you have kind of pockets of communities that are concentrated, and in those areas, where they're concentrated, you have you may have those outliers that just don't meet the threshold at all. But that's not to say that there aren't families in those pockets that are there, and maybe getting punished because they live in a nicer community and their kids go to a nicer school. But it doesn't mean that they necessarily are in the same financial category as everyone else. You want to move on to the next slide? Or you want to talk about the numbers? You go ahead.
No, that's totally great. Thank you for that. And you're so right about that. Even though there's only 2 districts out of Kentucky who can't, which is Oldham and Anchorage Independent, it's, those kids, there's still people there that would need this, and a school meals for all would really help every kid in Kentucky. So now we're going to talk about why we need school meals for all, and we'll just start off by saying that Kentucky is very unhealthy. Just being blatantly honest, it's kind of bad. So Kentucky ranks in the bottom with our adults, but not only that, but with our kids as well. You can see here that 38% of Kentucky children ages 10 to 17 are considered overweight or obese, and half of Kentucky's children in poor families are overweight or obese. And then only 4.7% of Kentuckians consume 2 or more fruits and 3 or more vegetables daily. And the US average was 8. So we're very on the bottom. We are not eating fruits and vegetables. So we need to be getting nutrition into the mouths of our kids, and we can do that by feeding them at school. But also we need to address food insecurity. Kentucky is among the top of food insecurity, especially for children. We have 22% of Kentucky's children who are food insecure currently, and not only that, but with one of our largest cities, Louisville, 1 in 5 Louisvillians living there are currently living in a food desert. So if they're not getting to eat at school, not much is waiting at home for them. Also, along with food insecurity, it's really putting burdens on food banks and things and organizations like that, because food prices have went up about 20% from 2020 to 2023. So it's just getting harder and harder for the purchasing of food like we need. And then we had some pandemic relief programs that did help, but unfortunately all of those are ending now, except for the summer EBT, like Dalla mentioned. And you can see over here on the graph, the pandemic happened and we start, implementing all these great policies and great programs, and then as soon as it they don't continue on the pandemic relief programs, it immediately shoots right back up, and we have families with children who are food insecure once again. And speaking of those pandemic responses, this was a a lot of great programs that were offered during the pandemic that were super helpful. But like I said, now all of them are being cut except for summer EBT. And Dalla, I didn't know if you might want to touch on any impacts that you felt like any of the pandemic responses had, and how now that some are being taken away, how that might impact your kids at school.
Right. So when we were in the grasp of COVID, we had a lot of options to take care of our families and our communities. And just because COVID went away, quote unquote, it hasn't really, but it's just become another flu now. But because of all of those assistance going away, those truly exacerbated needs are still there. When we were providing food relief for our community, we had a large number of families. I believe it was 3,000 families per week that would come and benefit from the meals we were providing. And now that that's gone and we are no longer providing those meals, we're only providing in-school meals for children. They have noticed, they talk about it. And then the PEBT was being loaded up to the cards to all of the families that had CEP, the school districts, and that benefited from it. But now that has also gone away, families have noticed the large sums of money that comes out of their paycheck for groceries, for basics, where you could go grocery shopping for a family of four with $100, for a week's time. $100 doesn't get you but 2 meals now. And it's very sad because it impacts people's mental health. The worrisome of being able to feed your families, the worrisome of being in a food insecure family as where you've never been before, or you were on the cusp of it, but you were able to manage to keep it at bay prior to COVID. And now after COVID, you even further down the hole as it were. Our families definitely have noticed our participation in our meal programs have increased as well. Prior to COVID, we were right at 71 to 72% participation, and we are at a good 82.5% now after COVID for our lunch participations in our program, which I like to think it's because we are amazing and we have awesome food, which we do. But I also know that there are other factors contributing to the participation. And I am just really happy and honored that we have the means to take care of our babies while they're with us. But the concern's still there for when they go home and don't necessarily have the means to access those meals.
Thank you for that. And really stressing the need for for those and the great impacts they've had, especially on your kids in your schools. So what are the impacts and why now? What would the impacts be if we did have a school meals for all policy? We could ensure that all students are hunger free and ready to learn. Like Dalla said, more better test scores equals more funding, which means better all around for the student. Of course, reducing the stigma in the cafeteria, ending school meal debt, easing administrative burdens, which I know a lot of people would love, supporting innovative service models, and then advancing racial equity. And I'll just share a quick story because actually I shared this with Dalla yesterday because it's on here about reducing the stigma in the cafeteria, which you're probably thinking, like, what does that even mean? How could there be stigma if like every kid, basically has the same meal? Well, every day I pick up my 9-year-old from school, and I always ask him what he has for lunch and who he sent by, what's going on, what's the hot goss, you know. And he said one day, well, I was gonna do something, but it was a bag. I wanted a bag of chips, but like I couldn't. And I was like, what do you mean? He was like, well, you have to buy the bag of chips. And I was like, oh, okay. And he was like, yeah, it's called the Rich Kid Special. And a group of 9-year-old kids are already stigmatizing and realizing classism and what sets them apart in ways that is uh, not their fault. Just because their parents don't have an extra $3 to $5 to give them for extra snacks in the lunch line. Yeah, it's starts young, and that would really help with free school meals for all policy. And of course, helping with kids with food insecurity, developing that nutrition education, the education part around what they're eating, how it's healthy for them, what's being served in their cafeteria. And then, of course, help it focus in the classroom to improve their performance. And this was the most recent data with how many students there are on free and reduced meals in Kentucky, which we have a lot of. And also, I just want to shout out through this thing, if you all love these photos, it's because they are from Dalla Emerson's Twitter and her beautiful kids in her school, as well as some farm to school pictures from Lori White at Community Farm Alliance. And the impact of Bowling Green schools, which Dalla talked about a minute ago. She has an 82% lunch participation. And Dalla, I'll let you take a couple minutes just to brag on yourself and your district and the impact you all have had feeding your kids.
So we really enjoy eating. That's really the basis of it all. And we enjoy seeing our babies eat as well. And we enjoy providing them locally sourced items. As you can see, those smiling faces, they are always ready to be on camera. I always ask permission first. Obviously, there's parental signatures that allow them to be on social media, but I always say, can I take your picture? And they are always ready to take pictures. The one in the middle with the 3 kids, that was chicken leg day, which makes me so happy because they were so excited for it. When I started a few years back, there was a lot of conversation about why there wasn't a whole lot of bone-in product available for K-12 at the time. And it was because kids didn't know where I guess chicken really came from or what it really looked like. I never forget there was a director that told me that she served bone-in chicken one time and the kid was mortified and said, "What is this? There's something in my chicken." So I made it a personal mission of my own to make sure that my babies would be well versed in food and educated in nutrition, and that when they left me to go out into the world, that they would have been exposed to everything and would not be surprised by anything culinarily wise or food nutrition wise. As you can see, there is a photo of a 3rd grader eating an entree salad. That was her meal for the day. So now we have a super diverse group of kids that they may not be as diverse at home as some parents tell me. You know, they eat things at school that they don't eat at home. They can make the same thing at home and not eat it. But I am very, very proud of our program and our team and the efforts they put in to making our program just amazing. And our kids have come to rely upon us. And I honor that that commitment that they see from our team. So super, super proud of what we do every day.
I love that. I just love it so much. They're just so sweet and precious, and the food looks so good too. Like, looking at all the pictures, I'm like, this looks so good. I'm hungry now. So biggest question here is, how do we succeed at this? How do we get a school meals policy through? What do we do? So we have a little like cycle here that we like to follow, which would be, we want to build and organize. One of the biggest things we can do is build and organize this grassroots effort around child feeding and hunger issues, especially around school meals. And then we want to, after we have our big grassroots coalition, we can lift up those impacted voices like students, teachers, nutrition directors like Dalla, and others in this space who have lived experience. Then we want to introduce and pass a school meals for all piece of legislation in the Kentucky General Assembly. But at the same time, if we can walk and chew gum at the same time, we also need to be lobbying and supporting school districts and individual schools to enroll into CEP, because I don't know if we stressed this earlier, CEP is voluntary. So you have to opt in, and, we want to convince as many schools to participate in that as possible. But we also need to advocate and talk with our legislators. And here's a little background of Kentucky's political landscape around school meals and school meal issues. So in 2021, there was a school breakfast bill that did not pass, introduced by Representative Riley. And then in 2022, Senator Howell introduced Senate Bill 151, which was the school breakfast bill, and it got passed. And it was to allow the first 15 minutes of educational time to allow a student to eat their breakfast. And just let you know, as a person who has a 9-year-old who oversleeps, and I shove them out of the door running into the school with their breakfast in their hand, I really appreciate that he can sit down and eat the breakfast in his hand. And then as well in 2022, we also had a school meals for all piece of legislation that was introduced by Representative Attica Scott, House Bill 80. It did not pass. It did not gain much traction at all, unfortunately. But I will say this Senate Bill 151, the breakfast bill, it passed. It had great support. Only one person did not vote for it. So yeah, a little weird opposite thing there. But and then on the federal level, there is some work being done by our Representative Morgan McGarvey. He has introduced or filed a School Meals Expansion Act. And there's more information that we can give you all later on that is about that. Just some top narratives that we've heard around this issue, that which is a little bit of pushback that we've gotten, which is parents should feed their own kids and it shouldn't be the responsibility of the state. It is too expensive, and that this is just a Democrat issue or a Democratic bill. And that is because we live in a supermajority red state, a Republican led legislature. So unfortunately, Democrats don't have a lot of power, and this issue typically is more seen on a Democrat issue. So combating all these narratives and why every kid deserves to have a meal at school without having to worry about it. So what are some advocacy opportunities that we would have coming into a school meals for all kind of policy? So the legislative session is right around the corner, literally January 2nd. It's the first Tuesday after the first Monday of January, and just so happens that January 1st is a Monday. So we'll be hitting the ground running then. And so just make sure to continue to attend our working group meetings, or getting on our listserv, or keeping out for our email updates on the school meals for all issue. Because once bills are introduced, there will be action alerts sent out. And this could mean other advocacy opportunities, like attending meeting with your legislator or submitting committee testimony, like we have Ken and Tanya here on the side doing. And there will be more information and materials to come. But we need your all's help on this issue to help us organize, and we need help mobilizing. So we're always focused on helping directly impacted people advocate and learning those skills to be able to advocate. So if you know someone who might be a farmer or local producer, a student, school counselor, school board member, anybody of the like, invite them to one of our meetings and join us, or for an upcoming training that we have coming up. So that would be great. And until then, here's just some things. If you feel like you need some action now, you can feel free to just use this template to send to your representative. But if you're looking to learn more, we always say include data, include your personal story. And KFAN is going to be holding 3 more advocacy trainings before the end of the year. And we will be doing a storytelling training, as well as a building power and advocacy training. So you can learn more there, and then formulate the best email ever after that. All right. Any questions? We have about 8 minutes to answer questions. And I'm realizing now I did not fix the contact slide with updated information. So Dalla, if you could put your information into the chat, and I'll put mine as well, we can and I will send out this later with your information. But if people would like it now. Anybody sure you don't have any questions for me or Dalla? All right.
So a quick question, where does the money come from? I don't know if I fully understand that, to fund CEP.
It's a federal money. It comes from a federal purse, essentially. It's money designated from the National School Lunch Program, federal grant, and then the states administer it. There's a lot more that goes into it. And I would suggest that if you really want to be a CEP expert of information, that you look it up. It's available online. If you go under the Kentucky Department of Education's webpage, it's under federal programs and child nutrition. It'll give you all the information on there. I always tell people, don't just rely on what you heard from me. Go do the research yourself. Just because I could misspeak something or give you information that I remembered incorrectly or whatnot. I do research on it all the time. If I feel like I forgot something or I'm not quite 100% on, I go back to the actual source material and look it up for myself. KDE's page has that information. The federal government page has it also. You can just Google CEP and it'll give you exactly the history behind it and where the money is coming from. Basically, the money is there. It's just how we allocate it. Does that answer your question, Rosie?
Yes, thank you. I'm
You're
just
welcome.
curious, you know, when people ask.
Right. Whenever we talk about universal meal, it's talked about throughout the whole of the United States. And oh, there's Steve Abbott. He is the president of the Kentucky School Nutrition Association, and he can probably speak to it a little bit. You want to jump in, Steve?
Oh, I don't mind a bit. Thank you guys so much for inviting me. Thank you, Dalla. You did a great job. I appreciate all the information and the invitation. I mean, Dalla's very good in sharing the information. I think CEP in itself is funded simply identically how our traditional reimbursement comes back as far as it's sourced through USDA. So obviously takes legislation at that level to put it in place. USDA obviously has some authority with CEP and those things there. And I think one of the primary reasons that districts are going to be shy in saying that 25% new mark doesn't really get us additional districts jumping into CEP because of the financial piece. To be honest, at 25% for a school, you guys can understand that 25% direct certification times a multiplier equals the amount of free reimbursement a district receives. That means that the rest of the meals served come from paid reimbursement, which is not enough to sustain CEP or funding for our food service funds as a whole. USDA controls that the multiplier is actually written in legislation. So the one problem we face, while that 25% is a new mark that we're all excited about, the actual funding is controlled by the multiplier. So hopefully we can see traction with the multiplier at some point. Of course, from what I hear in all other states, we're all trying to push, obviously, to have that multiplier change. So but no, I just wanted to kind of jump in and say thank you guys. So excited on the connections. You know, this is something for me that have not been historically part of these meetings or invited to the table, and so glad just to be part of things. And you know, I'm just reinforcing what Dalla says. You know, this thing for us is about making food accessible to babies, and our primary goal every day that we wake up, and what motivates me to keep doing it and keep going and keep. There's some hungry babies, and it doesn't matter what district you're in. And if you've ever experienced it, seen it, lived it, or been a part of a child's life who has, you are easy to become somebody who says, you know what, somebody has to jump out there and be this champion. And I just thank goodness for this group of us all who are trying to do the good. I believe that with our group, with all the organizations at one table, at the end of the day, there's nothing but positive going to come out of it for babies. So appreciate you guys, and thank you so much.
We are so excited to have you here. Oh, I think I'm frozen.
Factor that we are fighting. So fighting for that multiplier to be changed, it's probably the key of everything. You know, yes, CEP is great. Yes, CEP is accessible. However, the money that we are receiving has to equal the expenditures that we are incurring day in and day out for the programs to continue to be successful.
100%. And, you know, the conversation about, I'm glad to hear that it's got an official bill title at this point. But Armstrong and All's bill, I've been fortunate enough to be at the table for that conversation. You know, I think big picture, at least worth sharing with our group here, is that, you know, what they're trying to do for us is, you know, they know that going in, the bill that we have and the language that's there is not gonna be enough potentially to have a district who is like mine, mixed CEP, where I have schools that still process free and reduced applications. And then I have part of my district that is CEP, and I have some schools that seemingly at this point will never qualify for CEP, or it be financially viable for us to jump out there and take the risk, because like Dalla has explained, my fund overall can only sustain so much in the fact that we operate on a reimbursement basis, and that money from USDA in this school year, you know, this is not about bashing USDA. It's not that. I don't want it to appear to be that, but in some aspects, rolling into this school year, we had been, you know, operating with an additional reimbursement added to our lunch. And while they backed up, did the calculation for the formula for reimbursement, coming into the school year, they put out the message basically that school districts in their food service funds in this school year are receiving additional reimbursements. And in some aspects, that's a true statement. But in reality, we are actually bringing about 34 cents less per meal in the district for a free meal this year than we did last. And you couple that with the realities of inflation. It's a situation where the same foods, and Dalla gets, I'm sure, the same reports that I do from our vendors. You know, we primarily use HPS with GFS throughout the state of Kentucky at this point, and HPS provides us with an update of basically where they are in their contract and the flexibilities the contract provides them to increase pricing. This time's the increase is not terribly significant. Last time's was almost 6%. What you find in that situation is that their 6% increase truly, when you boil it down, is not across the board in all products. And you can see, and I'm sure Dalla's district is the same as mine. Just an example that I'll give you is one of the favorite products, I think, of all of our students, if the menu planner chooses to put it on the menu, is a product called Goodyman's 6-count chocolate donuts. Now, if you read the product information for this product, it tells you that their claims is it's the healthiest donut on the planet kind of thing, you know. It's fortified with proteins, lots of extra vitamins. So yes, you are in a situation where it is a chocolate donut. The kids absolutely love this product. This product in 2020 cost us 66 cents per unit. In this school year, that same product is 98 cents per unit. So you think about that coupled with the cost of the rest of your menu items. And you have, on average for me, my milk and juice cost me $0.25 each. My reimbursement for breakfast. So you guys, obviously, we have to know our meal patterns and what has to be offered to students. So I think typically across the board, we use software to get there. But that being said, this cost of products that we have now, our cost of labor is also up. I'm sure Dalla's district, just like mine, our employees, you know, coming into food service, you're not going to get rich. And it doesn't take long to figure out as an employee that this job has a lot of benefits that are not money related. And you have to stay in this thing for the right reasons. So all those things being out there, our cost of food is up. Our cost of supplies is up. Our cost of labor is up, but our amount of reimbursement did not grow at the same rate. So we're all in a situation where if you're not claiming those meals under CEP all at the free reimbursement rate, you're in a situation where financially you're already having to watch your P's and Q's. The money you made from COVID, you were required to invest. We're not allowed to have more than 3 months operating balance on hand. So that requires a spend down plan, and we have to invest that money. So you're not allowed to keep money for the rainy day. So that being said, with CEP, we all in Armstrong's bill, They are looking to have this bill be a living bill, basically, that we are able to revisit from year to year to year to really help close the gap with CEP and our CEP schools, districts like mine, where we have mixed CEP districts that are not claiming that 100%. I don't know what Dalla claims, but if all of those meals are not at 100%, this bill and it being a living bill is going to make one of the most positive impacts that we could imagine. So they're saying right now 92,000 in additional funds for my district. That is very positive. It's not enough, however, for me to say for my non-CEP schools that you can now become CEP. So just putting those facts out there, and the fact that Senator Armstrong and Representative All are aware of these things, and we have openly discussed them, which is the most like this. Yeah, it's the most positive thing that we can do. So I'll hush, but the realities for us all as a group is, if we continue to meet like this, come together, there's no doubt in my mind that positive is going to come from it for the babies that in those numbers you showed, for the need and the children in our state that don't have access to food. That's what I'm sitting here in this 25 years worth of, this is it. And thank you guys for inviting me to the table.
We are so excited to have you, and super excited for all your knowledge. I love it when I meet people super passionate, especially in the education and service industry, because even though I work in agriculture, my mom was a public education teacher for 30 years at one of the smallest counties in Kentucky, Robertson County, and has a very it's a calling that you all have to provide for the kids there. So I'm super excited, and Steve, hopefully, I know Robin got in touch with you, I believe, and we can get you coming to the meetings and attending our next training, which will be about defending the safety net. I put the registration link for that in the chat. And then after that, we have 2 advocacy building trainings, which is building power and advocacy, how to do that, and then storytelling and advocacy and what that means and how to do that. Last year, we focused a lot on media training and things like that. So this year, we're focusing more on how do you build power and how do you build your story to give you power. So very excited for that, and very excited to have everyone here today. And of course, if you all have questions, feel free to reach out to me, Kimmy, personally, or if you have questions about today's presentation, Dalla will answer your questions as well. So, all right. And thank you all so much. Have a great day.